Welcome to the Heartbreak Chronicles, where every story is a raw reflection of life. Hit that subscribe button to stay tuned, give us a like to show your support, and share this episode with your friends. Don't forget to leave a comment and let us know what you think. Now, let's dive into today's story. My name is Ryan and I am 35 years old. After 3 years of being passionately in love with Sarah, we finally entered into marriage. At that time, we were full of longing, as if the road ahead was paved with roses. This is Boston in 2019, a city of opportunity and challenge. I work as a junior programmer for a well-known software company downtown. Although the work is stressful, I love programming and enjoy the sense of accomplishment that comes from solving complex problems. Sarah, on the other hand, works as a sales rep for a large real estate company. She is not only outstanding in business, but also a star employee of the company due to her affinity and beauty. Sarah is great at using social media to promote herself. She regularly posts beautiful real estate photos and selfies on Instagram, attracting a large following. Every time she posts new content, she always garners thousands of likes and comments. There was no shortage of uncomfortable comments, and whenever I was offended by those inappropriate comments, Sarah always said, "Don't pay attention to the negative comments, just read the positive ones." However, even those so-called positive comments often make me jealous. You see, if I post my programming results, at best I'll get a few likes from my peers and no one will leave a comment. And every photo of Sarah draws tons of attention. This huge contrast stresses me out. Nonetheless, life goes on. I work hard and hope to get my foot in the door with the company and provide a better life for Sarah. We had plans to start a family, and for that reason I decided to use my spare time to learn new programming skills and improve my competitiveness. I started saving my monthly bonus for future further education. When I shared the program with Sarah, she was very supportive and happy for me. Thus began my busy life of working and studying at the same time. Every day when I returned from work to our apartment in the Back Bay area, I felt physically and mentally exhausted. But I still try my best to make time for Sarah because she will always be a top priority in my life. However, as time went on, I gradually realized that there was something unusual about Sarah's behavior. She seemed far more interested in her cell phone than in talking to me. At first, I didn't pay much attention to it, but it was getting worse and finally started to get on my nerves. One usual evening in the spring of 2020, I was working late at the office as usual. Suddenly, we were notified that the company's server had been hacked, and we needed to fix the system vulnerability overnight. Worked on it until 3 a.m. and finally solved the problem. Exhausted, I dragged myself home. As I walked up to the house, I realized that the door was surprisingly unlocked and the house was dark. I vaguely saw a faint flicker of light in the bedroom. I thought to myself, maybe Sarah has a surprise for me? After all, our anniversary was coming up. I pulled out my cell phone, intending to record the heartwarming moment. I tiptoed into the house, afraid to startle anyone. As I approached the bedroom, I suddenly kicked a pair of men's leather shoes under my feet. My heart sank so hard that the blood in my body seemed to freeze. I took a deep breath and slowly pushed open the bedroom door. The scene in front of me made me fall into a pit of ice. In the dim candlelight, I saw my beautiful wife in an intimate embrace with another man. The man was blindfolded and had his arms around Sarah's waist. What breaks my heart even more is that Sarah seems to be the one taking the initiative. I stood there for I don't know how long. It felt like an eternity. The image before me is seared into my mind and lingers. At that moment, it was as if I was looking at a stranger instead of the wife I had spent so much time with. She had never shown me such a passionate and spirited side. I exited the room silently and ran to the nearby public garden and sat on a bench. The cool breeze of a spring night blew, but my insides ached as if they were torn apart. I don't know what to do but let the tears flow silently. After sitting on a park bench for a couple hours, I decided to go home. When I walked in the door, I saw Sarah sitting on the couch watching TV as if nothing had happened. I was stunned that she could be back to her normal self in just a few hours. I didn't say a word and just laid down on the couch. Sarah came over and tried to get closer to me. I held back my anger and just coldly told her to leave. I told her the company was having serious technical problems and I needed to be alone. She listened and went back to the bedroom. That night, I tossed and turned, unable to sleep. My mind kept replaying the scene I had seen earlier in the day with anger, sadness, and confusion. I began to doubt our marriage and the past little by little. Who was the Sarah I loved so much, the one I thought I would spend my life with? How do I face this cruel reality? With these questions in mind, I welcomed the first rays of the early spring sun in Boston. After that sleepless night, my life changed forever. In the spring of 2020, while all of Boston was basking in the beauty of the cherry blossoms in full bloom, I was in the midst of a marital winter. I began to scrutinize Sarah's every move, hoping to find more clues. I tried to control my emotions and act like it was business as usual, but the inner torment was growing by the day. Over the next few days, I noticed Sarah's behavior becoming more and more erratic. She was always distracted and often giggled at her cell phone. Sometimes she would suddenly say she had to work late or meet with a client on an impromptu basis. Each time, I could sense she was lying, but I chose to remain silent. I'm starting to doubt myself. Maybe I'm just too sensitive? Maybe that night was just a terrible misunderstanding? But every time I think back to the images I saw that night, the anger inside me reignites. Finally, on a night when Sarah claimed to be having a get-together with her coworkers, I decided to take action. I quietly followed her out of the house and watched her drive to an upscale restaurant in the Cambridge area. There, I saw her meeting with a man in a suit. That man was the very person I saw that night. I hid in the cafe across the street and watched through the window as they talked and laughed about dinner and then left together. My heart broke again. All suspicions were confirmed. My wife was indeed cheating on me. When I got home, I began to search our apartment carefully, hoping to find more evidence. Deep in Sarah's closet, I found a compact, portable hard drive. My hands trembled as I connected it to the computer. What was displayed on the screen broke me down instantly. Those documents document Sarah's many private moments with that man. Every photo, every video was like a sharp knife, stabbing me hard in the heart. I couldn't believe that our home, our marriage, had become such a stage for lies. I saved the evidence and struggled internally with what to do with it. Part of me wanted to immediately confront Sarah and question why she was doing this to me. But another part of me is terrified and afraid to face this harsh reality. Just then I noticed a box of condoms in Sarah's drawer. A crazy idea suddenly flashed through my mind. I grabbed a needle and carefully poked a few small holes in each condom. I knew it was wrong and could have serious consequences, but I was out of my mind at that moment. The next day I called in sick and stayed in bed all day thinking, what should I do? Should I forgive Sarah and try to save our marriage? Or should I end the relationship and start over? My mind was full of contradictions and confusion. A few weeks later, Sarah began to experience morning sickness. When she told me the news, I had mixed emotions to the core. On the one hand, I knew that the child was probably not mine. On the other hand, I felt a strange sense of triumph, as if my plan had succeeded. I pretended to be ecstatic and offered to take Sarah to Massachusetts General Hospital for a checkup. At the hospital, I noticed a flash of panic on Sarah's face when the doctor confirmed her pregnancy. She tried to convince us that we weren't financially capable of raising a child yet, but I insisted on keeping the baby. Looking at the look of confusion and worry on Sarah's face, I had mixed feelings inside. Over the next few days, I began a covert investigation. I used my programming skills to secretly monitor Sarah's cell phone and computer. I realized that she was in contact with that man more often than I thought. Not only did they rendezvous at our home, but they also dated at the real estate company where she worked. Every message, every picture, felt like another betrayal of our marriage. I contacted a lawyer friend, Alex, and confided in him the whole story. He listened, was silent for a long time, and then told me that my behavior could have serious legal consequences. He advised me to calm down and think about every next move. However, just when I was about to give up and was ready to forgive Sarah, I checked her communication history once again. This time, I saw her and the man discussing how stupid I was to be taking care of their child. In that moment, all pity and hesitation evaporated. I was determined to make them pay for their behavior. In the summer of 2020, as the entirety of Boston was under the haze of the epidemic, I began to carefully plan my next move. I knew that the next few days would be an uphill battle, but I had no choice. I had to get justice for myself, for my marriage that was falling apart. Late at night, I sat on the balcony of our apartment, looking out over the sparkling Charles River and reflecting on all that had happened in the past few months. My heart was filled with sadness, anger, and a hint of confusion about the future. I know that no matter what happens next, my life will be changed forever. With these mixed emotions, I began to prepare for the coming storm. In the summer and fall of 2020, Boston was shrouded in the gloom of an epidemic. As Sarah's pregnancy progressed, my internal conflict grew stronger. On the one hand, I felt a twinge of anticipation and warmth for the child to be born. On the other hand, I couldn't shake the fact that this child might not be me. This complex of emotions almost tore me apart. I decided to ask for help. I contacted my old friend Kevin, a retired Marine who now works at the Boston Harbor. Kevin is a reliable person, and although he acts slightly rashly at times, I know he will have my back. When we met in a remote corner on the banks of the Charles River and I poured out the whole story to him, he was silent for a long time and then asked me what I needed help with. "I need to make sure this baby isn't mine," I said, "but I can't just ask for a paternity test that would raise Sarah's suspicions." Kevin thought for a moment, then came up with a bold plan. He said he could try to get a sample of the man's DNA so we could match it privately. I hesitated because I knew it might involve illegal behavior, but the anger and hurt I felt deep inside eventually overcame reason. "Okay," I agreed, "but don't use any violence." For the next few days, I was distracted, constantly thinking about whether or not we had the right plan. I'm starting to wonder if I've gone too far. But every time I see Sarah as if nothing has happened, my resolve strengthens again. A week later, Kevin arrived with a small bottle at our agreed-upon location, a remote corner of Fenway Park in Back Bay. I didn't dare ask him how he got the sample, but just gratefully accepted the bottle. I immediately contacted my attorney friend Alex and asked for his help in arranging a DNA test. Waiting for the results is torturous. I tried to pretend it was business as usual, accompanying Sarah to her maternity appointments and discussing nursery decorations. Every time I touched her belly and felt the fetal movement, I fell into deep self-doubt. Have I made the right decision? If the child is really mine, how do I deal with what I've done? Finally, on a rainy fall day, the test results came back. My hands were shaking as I opened that envelope at a cafe near my office. The results showed that the child was indeed not mine. In an instant, a variety of emotions flooded the mind: relief, anger, sadness, and a hint of unspeakable loss. I sat in the cafe, staring out through the foggy windows at the pedestrians hurrying by, not knowing what to do. My marriage was in name only, and I was about to become the legal father of a child, even though that child was not related to me by blood. I felt more alone and lost than ever. Just then, Sarah sent me a text asking me what I wanted to eat for dinner. This common enough question almost broke me. How I wish I could confess everything and hope that this is just a nightmare. But I know that things can't be undone. "Whatever," I replied, "I'll be home later." That evening, when I returned to our apartment in the Back Bay area, Sarah was in the kitchen preparing dinner. She gently asked me if I was okay and said I looked tired lately. Hearing her concerned words tore my heart apart once again. I forced a smile and said it was just a little stressful at work. Sarah nodded and didn't ask any more questions. As she turned to continue cooking, I noticed her hand unconsciously stroking her bulging belly. At that moment, I realized that not only had I lost my wife, but I might lose my chance to be a father forever. I began to prepare for the final act. I contacted Alex again and asked him to prepare divorce papers. We agreed to file for divorce immediately after the birth of the child to avoid undue stress on Sarah and the child during the pregnancy. Despite the resentment inside, I couldn't quite let go of my concern for them. For the next few months, I lived a double life. By day, I was a caring husband to my wife and soon-to-be-born child. By night, I was plotting how to end the marriage. This divided life was exhausting, but I knew I had to keep going. In early 2021, when Boston was covered in a thick blanket of snow, Sarah's due date arrived. When she started having bouts, I immediately drove her to Brigham and Women's Hospital. As I waited outside the labor and delivery room, My emotions were once again mixed. Even though I knew that baby wasn't mine, I couldn't help but shed a tear when I heard the first cry of my newborn. I hesitated when the nurse came out and invited me in to see the baby and Sarah. Should I visit that child? That innocent life that came into this world through the fault of adults. In the end, I chose to go in. Watching Sarah hold that tiny life in her arms tore my heart apart once again. That child was so small, so vulnerable, and completely unaware of the situation he was in. I wanted to reach out and hug him, but was afraid that if I did, I might never be able to let go again. Just then, hospital staff walked in with the birth certificate and asked for the father's information. I take a deep breath, look at Sarah, and then say, "I'm not the father." A dead silence fell over the room. Sarah looked at me in horror, as if she couldn't believe her ears. I calmly walked out of the labor and delivery room, knowing that a difficult confrontation would follow. I stood in the hallway of the hospital, looking through the window at the snowflakes flying outside, and felt a sudden wave of exhaustion. I knew that from this moment on, my life would change forever. And this innocent child will face an uncertain future because of the mistakes of the adults. I closed my eyes and silently prayed that this child would grow up safe and healthy and away from the gloom of this storm. I stood in the hallway of Brigham and Women's Hospital, looking through the window at the snowflakes flying outside, and took a deep breath. I knew that the next thing I was going to face was going to be a tough confrontation, but I had made up my mind to stay the course. I asked the nurse to let Sarah know that we needed to talk. When I walked into the hospital room again, Sarah's eyes were red and swollen, and it was obvious she had been crying. She held that newborn tightly as if it was the only thing she had to rely on. My heart couldn't help but soften, but then I remembered the pain of the past few months and my resolve strengthened. "Why?" Sarah asked, choking back a sob. "Why are you doing this?" I took a deep breath and said as calmly as I could, "Sarah, I know this baby isn't mine. I know about you and that man." Sarah's face instantly turned pale. She opened her mouth to say something, but in the end just cried silently. Just then, Alex and Kevin walk in. Alex was holding a stack of papers that I knew were divorce papers. Kevin, on the other hand, brought the man, the child's biological father. "Sarah," I whispered, "our marriage is over. These are divorce papers. I'd like you to sign so we can end this with honor." Sarah looked at me with fear and confusion in her eyes. But what about the baby?" she stammered. "The child will be with his real father," I said, gesturing to the man, "and I believe that's the best arrangement for everyone." We spent the next few hours in a private conference room at the hospital processing all the legal documents. Throughout the whole process, Sarah barely spoke, just mechanically signing documents. The man looked both surprised and confused, but under Kevin's watchful eye, he too signed his name, acknowledging his father. When it was all over, I took one last look at the baby. He slept quietly in Sarah's arms, oblivious to all that was happening around him. I felt a pang of deep regret for this innocent life involved in the complexities of the adult world. I silently wish him a healthy and happy life. The moment I walked out of the hospital, the cold Boston winter wind hit me, but I felt a strange sense of relief. Though still filled with pain and confusion inside, I knew I could finally start a new life. Over the next few days, I threw myself into my work. I moved out of that memory-laden Back Bay apartment, rented a small suite in the Cambridge neighborhood, and started working at a new tech startup. Despite the radical changes in my life, I am gradually finding a new balance. Yet, late at night, I still think of Sarah and the baby I once thought would be my child. I began to reflect on my role in the whole thing. Although I was a victim, some of my behavior was questionable. I began to realize that revenge doesn't really heal the wounds of the heart. In the spring of 2022, when the cherry blossoms were once again in full bloom along the Charles River, I received an email from Sarah. She apologized to me in an email and admitted her mistake. She said she and the man had broken up and were now raising the child alone. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She just wanted me to know that she really regretted it. After reading the email, I stood in front of the window of my Cambridge district apartment, staring at the bossy skyline in the distance and thinking. I remembered the happy times we had and the painful betrayal. I realized that even though I couldn't forgive Sarah for her behavior, I needed to let go of the resentment in my heart in order to truly start a new life. I decided to write back to Sarah. I told her that while we couldn't go back in time, I wanted her to take care of that child. I also acknowledged some of my misdeeds in the whole incident and apologized. After writing this letter, I felt a peace that had been missing for a long time. Now, 2 years have passed since that fiasco. I've gotten my feet wet at my new company and have been involved in the development of an AI program that has achieved quite a bit of success. I moved to a new apartment overlooking the Charles River and started a whole new life. Although that experience left me deeply scarred, it also made me grow a lot. I have learned to value sincere feelings more and to maintain my sanity and dignity in the face of betrayal. I have learned that true happiness is not based on revenge or hurting others, but comes from inner forgiveness and growth. Sometimes I still think about the kid I never met. I want him to grow up healthy and happy, away from the strife of the adult world. Although we are not related by blood, I silently bless him in my heart and wish him peace and prosperity in his life. I recently met a girl named Emma at a tech seminar. She is a PhD student at MIT in a field of research that overlaps somewhat with my work. She was gentle, intelligent, and gave me renewed hope for love. We are slowly developing a relationship and value each other for the hard work we have done. I know it takes time and courage to fully trust someone, but I am willing to open my heart again. As I look back on the past, I am keenly aware that life is like the changeable weather in Boston. It has sunny days and stormy moments. It is important that we continue to learn and grow in the process. Regardless of the setbacks, we must remain hopeful and believe that good things will come eventually. Today, as I stand in front of the window of my new company, overlooking the city I love so much, my heart is filled with anticipation for the future. I know that I am ready for a new challenge, no matter what awaits me ahead, because I believe that life will always give us a second chance if we remain kind and courageous. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's story. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you have a story to share about your own or someone else's experience, please feel free to contact me. Take care.